Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for letting me speak today. Lots and lots of interesting conversation, lots and lots of really clever people in the room. I'm going to bring you back down to my level now, which is one of the things we're really keen to do, and we're really keen to work with people, is trying to get people to understand the impact of what they're doing. So whilst we can have lots and lots of predictions, we can have lots and lots of information, if people don't change their behaviors, then nothing changes. So how can we provide that information around utilizing what we call optioneering to try and give them the information they need, but actually to try and understand why? And that's what we're really focusing on here today. So we're starting to talk about transport. Again, we've had one great example from the marine industry. As we get into modes of transport, they change all the time. Where we were 5 years ago is not where we are now. Where we will be in 5 years, again, is far different than where we are now. So really being able to understand how we can utilize information, utilize the data we have, whether it is through a digital twin, whether it is through using AI, is really important to be able to understand what that means. So we can see here, obviously, mobility hubs, for those who aren't familiar with them, it gives people choice of how they get to their end destination. So being able to utilize different forms of modes of transport, whether it is traditional car, as we're now getting into more EVs, we're utilizing, bikes, all sorts of different things, but be able to provide people with choice so they can look at a different, more sustainable way of getting to their end destination. And actually, one of the main focuses we're really starting to see now is when we start making choices, and certainly when we start looking at these designs, it's getting more complicated. It's getting more challenging. Also, we need to be accountable for what decisions are made by whom. So people understanding why I'm spending my council money, why am I spending my investment in a region, why am I doing this? Because people want to know where their money is going. So it's getting far more complicated, not just from a understanding where the location is, how do we connect to different places, is the energy grid, again, we talked about energy and how energy and transport are so interconnected. It's really important that what is the grid capacity, we're all going to come across as we learn to use more EVs, we need to use more different types of transport. It's really important we understand how we can do that, how we can use renewables to try and support the energy grid. And being able to understand, again, what the energy pricing going forward is, these are all really important questions because actually it impacts us day to day. So being able to look at all these options or all these constraints, how do we go about making these choices? How do we go about understanding what's right? And again, how are we accounting for this? And it's really quite, not just from a cost or a performance point of view, we also need to start thinking about social value. Are things in the right place for the right people who need access to their transportation? Simple things like the concepts of 15, 20-minute cities. How can I get, people who are vulnerable or people who need access to doctors or dentists, all those things are really important. So how do we provide the right information to make sure we're making those right decisions that people can understand why I've done what I did? And the conversation this morning, about how do we engage people? How do we get them, if they don't understand what's happening, why we're doing these things, they'll never change their behavior. So making things really easy to understand is an absolute big challenge for everyone in the industry. That how can we get this information in a way they can consume it and make sure they can understand what they're doing and what we're doing. So one of the things that we've been doing, and I want to give a quick use case, is we've worked with the Greater Southeast Net Zero Hub around how can these mobility hubs that are really key for the communities, how can we understand we can get more of them? And actually, how can we turn park and rides, which were really important 5-10 years ago, they're just sitting idle. How can we utilize that space to be really important to help the community? And we worked with Urban Foresight, one of our partners, to make sure we were able to deliver this toolkit that the councils were able to understand how can I make my decision based on what's available, what's there. How can I use this to generate revenue going forward for the local community and local council by utilising things like batteries to store things that are energy that's been generated by wind farms or solar PV. Solar PV seems to be a really important technology. How can we utilise that not just for charging cars that may be at these hubs, but also sending it back into the grid, looking at local community, making sure we can really look after that. So it's really important for us that not only do we get this information and we build, whether it's a digital twin or we're using AI for this information to help us forecast across multiple different silos of information. And that's a real challenge, not just from where does data come from, but also how can we use it in the right way to get that information to the right people at the right time. So whilst we have a number of these platforms that are being utilised by councils, we're also starting to engage in other projects, giving the public access to some information. Why have they spent that money on an area that I'm not living in? Because it's really important to people understand where we're going, what we're going to do next, and actually they feel part of these decision making. And that's what digital twins and AI mean to us, is that how can we take these approaches that means it's all encompassing and really important to the community. And from our point of view, thank you very much.
Stephen, question for yourself. Have you identified any behavioural patterns in the data you collect or use, specifically around multimodal transport, that could inform transport decisions at a local level?
That's a really good question. A lot of what we do is being able to look at multimodal, and a lot of the clients we speak to are very interested in how we can shift from just using the car to try and engage and get things like cycle lanes, bus lanes involved, one-way systems, how that impacts local housing and making sure we're encompassing everyone in there. So absolutely, we're very focused on making sure we can encompass all those different options, or optioneering as we call it, so we can really understand what's going on. Excuse me. But the main thing we try and do is validate. So again, with all the digital twin talk, how do we validate what we're doing and bringing in information from things like traffic count data, people behavioural patterns, we bring that back in to give you that full circle to look at what's going on.